I was working with a small company that was based out of SPEC Labs in Toronto. As is the case with many small companies, small biotech companies, once they reach a stage where they need to scale, they can't find lab space. And they run into the issue of not finding a landlord who will rent them like 500 square feet of space, and there's no ready lab space available. So I was looking at similar models in the US, in Europe, and elsewhere. And I thought, why don't we have this in Canada? Why don't we have shared lab spaces here? So I started working on that. And along the way, I met my co-founders, Katya Park and Sam, and we thought, let's put our heads together and get that done.
From laboccupier.com, welcome to NGBiPlus, a podcast about the organizations that support Canada's life sciences community and the people behind them. Hi, it's Jim Wilson, and my guest today is Doris Qamar, who is founder and CEO of SPEC Labs in Mississauga, Ontario. SPEC Labs is a not-for-profit organization that provides shared, ready-to-use wet lab space for life sciences companies that are looking for facilities in which to scale. Doris has a background in analytical chemistry and material science and experience in biotechnology and medtech, but at her core, she's someone who likes to connect people and help. In our conversation, Doris explains how she and her team are tackling one of the biggest barriers facing Canadian biotech companies from coast to coast, and that barrier is getting access to affordable wet lab space. We also discuss how the SPEC Labs model supports companies and why keeping innovation and intellectual property in Canada is increasingly important. Before we get to our conversation with Doris, we'd like to remind you this podcast is part of the NGBi podcasts, which were created to promote Next Great Big Ideas, Canada's Life Sciences Summit. NGBi is an annual, independently organized, not-for-profit fundraising event in support of McMaster Children's Hospital, and you can find details at nextgreatbigideas.com. This episode of NGBi Plus was recorded in March 2026. Our guest today is Doris Qamar, who is founder and CEO of SPEC Labs in Mississauga, Ontario. Doris, welcome to NGBi Plus.
Thanks, Jim. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm glad we're finally able to make this happen. And this podcast is about organizations that support the Canadian life sciences community. And SPEC Labs is perhaps the newest addition to that list because you're just in the process of opening, correct?
Correct. So we have been working on setting up the space over the past couple of years, and we're finally ready to open. And we have our first clients coming in April 1st. So
fabulous.
It's been an exciting journey.
So I know you're busy, and I appreciate you making the time to do this. I would appreciate you telling the story about the company. What is SPEC Labs all about?
Absolutely. I'm going to start from the very beginning. I started thinking about SPEC Labs way back in 2020 when I was working with a small company that was based out of SPEC Labs in Toronto. As is the case with many small companies, small biotech companies, once they reach a stage where they need to scale, they can't find lab space. And they run into the issue of not finding a landlord who will rent them like 500 square feet of space, and there's no ready lab space available. So I was looking at similar models in the US, in Europe, and elsewhere. And I thought, why don't we have this in Canada? Why don't we have shared lab spaces here? So I started working on that. And along the way, I met my co-founders, Katya Park and Sam, and we thought, let's put our heads together and get that done. So we launched SPEC Labs as a non-for-profit with the goal of allowing companies to continue to innovate and continue to do the science in Canada without worrying about the space, the infrastructure that they need.
Okay, and I'm looking forward to doing a deeper dive into that. You mentioned your two partners. Could you tell us a bit more about them?
Absolutely. So Katya Park is a neuroscientist, and she's worked in the lab for a number of years, and she's had the same pain. She was seeing colleagues start companies and not find space and end up moving. Either like one partner would move and the other partner would stay in Canada, and then she thought this can't be sustainable. And Sam Rikatsa was an executive at many Canadian and international CDMOs, so he's been in the industry for such a long time, and he was seeing the same thing. And we thought each of them was working on the same concept, just separately. So all three of us thought about the same thing and we thought about it separately. And we were having conversations with folks in the industry, and everybody was saying, have you met Sam? Have you met Katya? So we've met and we thought, okay, let's do this together.
And when did this go from being someone should do something about this to I think I'm going to do something about this?
Honestly, my family lives in Ancaster, and I remember driving down the highway and seeing the sign on MIP that was saying lab space for rent. And I thought, how hard can this be? So I called them up.
You found out.
That was like back in 2020. So yeah, I called them up and I said, do you have space? And they said, well, it's not constructed yet, and so on and so forth. And MIP has gone through like many iterations during that time. So initially I thought, okay, like if there's space available in Hamilton, like we'll get it done in Hamilton. And then they ended up changing directions and whatnot. And we thought, okay, let's try to find somewhere else in the GTA. So that's where the Mississauga campus came to be.
And you're in Sheridan Research Park. I think it's still got that moniker, which is at the northeast corner of Winston Churchill and the QEW, which is also just north of, what's the GO stop there? Just south of the QEW? Clarkson, thank you. So relatively close to the Lakeshore GO line and right off the highway. It's a great location. And it's maybe a 10-minute drive to the University of Toronto, Mississauga?
Yeah, less than that, about a 7-minute drive.
Yeah. So great location. And I was in your facility last week. Love what you've done. Let's talk about the space itself. How large is it?
So it's 20,000 square feet altogether, and we've divided it up into shared lab spaces. So those are available by the bench so that a smaller company can come in and take up one bench, or they can take up 4, however many they need. And we've also designed some individual private lab bays so that when companies scale, they can go from that space into the next space seamlessly within the same facility. We also have office space and boardrooms that are going to be available later this summer. Really, when we were thinking about the concepts of the space, we thought, how can we encourage those collisions, those partnerships that you would normally get in a co-working space, but wouldn't otherwise be available to you if you were to rent your own, for example. So we wanted to have like the big open windows so that you can get some natural light. We wanted folks to be able to talk to their colleagues and talk to other companies in the space as well and see what they're doing. And we thought, okay, this would be like a match made in heaven if, for example, a therapeutic company is right next door to a drug delivery platform and they kind of figure out, oh, like you're working on can help me make my product better. And ultimately, we thought, okay, if none of these companies succeed, let's just assume, because this is a startup world. I mean, companies can make it or not make it or whatever. If one of these companies succeed, how much impact would that have on Canadian healthcare? If one company is working on one therapeutic, one diagnostic. So the impact is massive. And that was something that we wanted to keep in the forefront as well.
You mentioned the windows, and the people who are interested in seeing this facility, I strongly recommend just going and looking at it. You'll be impressed. And coming back to the benches and minimum, maximum size of tenants that can lease space there, like you mentioned a bench which seats 6 people?
It's 6 foot wide, and we're not placing any restrictions on how many people you can bring in because some companies run 24/7, right? So if you've got 2 people in the morning, 2 people in the evening, and so on, what we have is an all-inclusive model. You are resident, you take up a bench, you can bring in as many people within reason. Don't bring in 10 people to work on one bench at the same time. And everything will be included for you. Your gases, your special DI water, electricity, internet, utilities. It's truly an all-inclusive model. We're not trying to price gouge. Really, the goal of the space is to promote innovation.
Hi, it's Jim. When we come back, Doris explains why access to infrastructure is increasingly important for scaling startups in the Canadian life sciences community. Stay with us. I'm Jim Wilson, and you're listening to NGBiPlus. If you're a new listener, we would like to explain what NGBiPlus is all about. There are a lot of people and organizations in the Canadian life sciences community who are doing great work behind the scenes, and they often go unrecognized. The goal of this podcast is to talk about who those organizations are, explain what they do, and shine a light on the people behind them and the benefits they provide. This show is also part of the NGBI podcasts that we produce to help promote Next Great Big Ideas, Canada's Life Sciences Summit. NGBI is an annual national networking event for Canada's life sciences community. So if you're an investor, an industry supplier, an academic researcher, one of today's industry leaders, or perhaps a startup founder who just might be one of tomorrow's leaders, we invite you to join us at NGBI. For details, please go to nextgreatbigideas.com. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the show. Welcome back. It's Jim Wilson, and my guest today is Doris Qamar from SPEC Labs in Mississauga, Ontario. So the services that would be on top of that, you've got a shared autoclave, I assume, and hazardous waste disposal and laundry service, that sort of thing. So everything is included.
Everything is included. Well, we're not including your reagents and your supplies. You have to buy those.
Right. Right.
But all of your basic lab equipment, so glass wash, cryogenic freezers, so we've got -20s and -80s and nitrogen dewars, cell culture room with incubators. So all of that is included, and it's just a one fee.
What about consumables? Have you negotiated contracts with companies to provide those?
Absolutely. And that was something that we also cared about, giving buying power to companies. So we have several suppliers and we don't have any exclusivity contract with any of them. And they've all offered to provide discounts under the SPEC Labs umbrella. So if you're a SPEC Labs company, once you sign up, you get a full list of our suppliers. You would contact them, you would start an account as a SPEC Labs company, and then you would get access to discounts anywhere between 5 to 15% because we're allowing companies to buy altogether. So it would be much cheaper for them than if they were to go out and buy it on their own.
Okay. A moment ago, you mentioned if somebody wanted to come in 24/7, and some startups have people that like to work odd hours. And I'm wondering if you were being euphemistic or that's actually the case. If someone wants to come in at 2 o'clock in the morning and conduct or check up on what's going on, that's fine.
Absolutely. That's absolutely possible. We're providing them with after hours access to the facility, and we have some SOPs to make sure that somebody's safe. So for example, if you're by yourself in the lab, you can't be doing any hazardous chemical handling, for example, late at night when nobody knows where you are. So we have some SOPs to protect people to make sure that they're going to be safe. But yes, the facility is open 24/7 and they can come in and they can work anytime. They can check on their experiments. If they have a bioreactor going, that is not an issue at all.
With regard to the minimum and maximum lease terms, what would those be?
So typically our lease terms are 2 years, but our agreements are incredibly flexible. We're telling companies that you can break the agreement anytime within 60 days with no penalty. So if you come in and let's say you make it big, you've got like 2 people working and then all of a sudden your team grows and you're like 12 people and then you need to move on to the next space. You don't have to worry about getting stuck for 2 years. That's not an issue at all. You can just move on. And we've designed it this way so that we can facilitate growth for these companies as well. So if you want to go month to month, that's fine too. We're not going to kick you out after 2 years. You can stay and you can continue doing the great work that you're doing.
Wow, that's incredibly flexible. I'm sure a lot of people's ears just went up listening to that. We've been chatting for a while and we know one another through the industry. I can't imagine the hoops that you and your team have had to jump through over the last few years. And looking back, has the journey been what you expected?
I don't think any entrepreneurial journey is what you would expect it to be. We are absolutely living the startup life here because we are a startup serving startups. It's been challenging and rewarding and so much fun. Lots of ups, lots of downs, but I think we've stuck with the long game here and we're launching finally.
I'm thrilled that you're at this stage. Has there been anything where looking back you thought, I wish somebody had pulled me aside and said, hey, be careful about this?
Absolutely. There's been so many, and there's been so much learning throughout this opportunity. I think that the easiest thing would have been for us to find a space that was already set up, and we could not find anywhere that worked. Yeah, it's been tough. I mean, we had many, many challenges starting up, especially since, first of all, it was non-for-profit. Second of all, we're government funded. So thanks to Federal Development Agency of Southern Ontario, we've got funds to kickstart the space and to put in all of that money into capital equipment. I'm trying to think of like something specific because there's so much.
I know there's been a lot of people trying to throw roadblocks up in your path, and you've succeeded in overcoming them at every stage. And like I said earlier, I can't imagine what you've had to go through to get today.
You know what? One of the most annoying things that were ever thrown at us was that everywhere we went, we've had people say, for example, there are folks doing this in the US that have been doing it for much longer than you have, who have more experience and are better funded, and they're going to come here and kill your business, right? So why would we invest in something like this? Or why would we care about something like this? And the answer is because we're Canadian. Like, we started doing this in 2020, and I thought, I can't believe that people will say, let's just sit around and wait for somebody from outside to come and do this. And they weren't willing to put the effort that it took to develop a Canadian solution for Canadian companies. And I keep saying we started doing this like way before Trump. I don't know if I'm allowed to be political here, but
you go wherever you want to go.
Like, we started doing this before this massive wave of Canadian nationalism hit the public mindset. And we honestly cared about keeping the IP in Canada and keeping the development in Canada. When you're looking at the amount of research that comes here, you only have to look through, like at insulin, for example, because it was developed here. We have top-notch scientists that are doing some cutting-edge, state-of-the-art research, and almost none of it ends up in Canadian hands. Like, tell me one large Canadian-owned pharma.
Yeah, you can count them on one finger kind of thing when we're talking about global companies. And that company that I'm thinking about is a generic company, so Apotex. And if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, it looks like they're doing a bit of a pivot, but that's another conversation. When we come back, Doris and I talk about why collaboration and support are the keys to success in Canada's life sciences community. Stay with us. I'm Jim Wilson, and you're listening to NGBiPlus. Hi, it's Jim. We hope you like what we're doing, and if you do, we have a favor to ask. We will greatly appreciate you promoting us on social with the hashtags NGBiPlus, NGBI Podcasts, and NGBI Summit. And please become a subscriber so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks so much for listening. Let's get back to today's conversation. Hi, it's Jim Wilson, and I'm speaking today with Doris Qamar of SPEC Labs and how she and her team are helping address one of the biggest challenges we have in the Canadian life sciences startup community, which is access to affordable, ready-to-use wet lab space. You mentioned earlier funding. The federal government is one of your partners. Are there any others?
There are. I'm not at liberty to discuss any of them right now. We have some funding through our landlord, and they have been incredibly cooperative and really great to work with, Ravelin. And we have another source of funding that I'm not at liberty to discuss at this point.
Well, not that you're busy enough. This is the first SPEC Labs location. Are there plans for others?
Absolutely. Our vision is Canada-wide network of these incubators, of these spaces. I think that there's more than enough demand across the Canadian landscape. I mean, it is a market, but I don't really like to call healthcare a market. It just annoys me a little bit. But yes, absolutely. Our vision is Canada-wide. And once we finish setting up the Mississauga campus fully later on this summer, we're going to move on to our next project.
Can you say what geography that will be?
That is a conversation for another time.
Okay. So in 2 years' time, this site will be solidly up and running, and it'll be full long before then. And you'll have your eyes clearly set on another location from the sounds of it.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And what's it going to take to get there? Is it just funding?
Funding. Partnerships plays such a huge part in this, because what we wanted to do in Mississauga is make sure that all of the wraparound supports were available for companies. So it's not just we're going to drop in the middle of a city and say, here's the space, start working. We wanted to make sure that there's all sorts of supports that they can get that they wouldn't be otherwise able to get. Some of the challenges that startups face, for example, that they can't get an accountant, or they can't get insurance, or they can't get partnerships, folks that they need to work with, collaborators. Some of them have been asking us, and a lot of the companies that approach us say, for example, oh, what if we need a clean room? Or what if we need a vivarium? Or what if we need XYZ? And we've said, we don't have it right now, and we don't have the capability to build it. But what we've done is we've built relationships and partnerships with other organizations and companies in the space, so that if there's something that you need, we'll be able to find it for you, and we'll be able to get it for you. And one such example is our partnership with the University of Toronto, the Mississauga campus. And what we've managed to secure is access to the core facilities, the core research facilities at UTM. So if a company needs a large piece of equipment or instrumentation and they're using it, let's say once a week, they can go down to the Mississauga campus and use it there.
That's great.
Yeah. And that was something that we absolutely had to have before we started setting up the facility.
So if somebody's got a problem that they're not sure someone can solve, they should at least pick up the phone and call you.
Absolutely. And I tell folks, even if you're not a SPEC Labs company, if you need something, just give us a call. We're super friendly. I'm always going to pick up the phone. That is, if I have my hands free. And I'll send you where you need to go.
Yeah. Well, I agree with what you've just said. You are super friendly, as is the rest of the team, and experienced, professional. And I'd like to touch on another change in the market that's happened recently. J Labs retreated from Mars, and it wasn't just Toronto that they pulled out of. There were 2 or 3 other locations, but that space has been backfilled by BioLabs out of Boston.
Yeah.
So I don't see the two of you as competing. I see them as being complementary.
Absolutely. And that's how we see it as well. And even with J Labs, when they were around, we were in good conversations with them, and we see ourselves as a feeder. So companies that are leaving BioLabs, for example, can come to us. And I know that BioLabs sets a timeline for how long companies can be there. So we're always happy to work with the companies that have used up their runway there or in need of additional lab space or additional services. So I'm always happy to talk to anybody in the space, other incubators included.
Again, congratulations on getting to this point, and I'm excited for what's coming down the pipe for you. We end these conversations by asking generally the same question, which is, what 2 things should the Canadian life sciences community take away from our conversation?
They should know that there are solutions out there. It's not always very clear, but don't hesitate to network. Go out. A lot of scientists seem to sit in the lab and want to do the work and just the work, right? Like they have the blinders. They can't see beyond that. But going out and talking to people, because you're going to be surprised what we have and what's available and what could be available to us. We've had people come out and say, hey, do you need XYZ? I can give that. And it absolutely surprised us. And I'm always amazed and happy to see Canadian generosity, because that's something I don't think you're going to get elsewhere. Companies came out and supported us with absolutely no expectation of anything in return except a phone call to say thank you. That's all.
Well, again, congratulations. I know that you're very busy. You're opening up in a few weeks, and you've got a whole bunch of things on the go. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. It's good to speak with you.
Really happy to do it. Thank you, Jim. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
That was Doris Qamar of SPEC Labs in Mississauga, Ontario. To learn more about the work Doris and her team are doing, please go to speclabs.ca. You can also follow them on social at LabsSpec. That's LABSSPEC. If you're wondering who I am and what I do when I'm not hosting podcasts, please check out jim-wilson.ca and laboccupier.com. You can also follow me on social at LabOccupier. This show was researched by Xenia Pinto and edited by No Limit Marketing. On a final note, if you'd like to get in touch, please send me an email. My address is jwilson@leonard, that's LENNARD.com. I'm Jim Wilson, and you've been listening to NGBiPlus. See you next time.